In my opinion, it's the most stressful industry in the world. I mean, I don't know a more stressful industry. For me, in order to be a better prospector, either in order to be a better leader, in order to be a better manager, hirer, firer, to be better with your clients, we have to.
So you're the founder and CEO of North & Co., a real estate brokerage with close to the upper 200 agents, and you do over $1 billion a year in sales. But
right now, I think that the biggest miss in residential real estate brokerage is personal development. I think we are so oversaturated with CE classes and being beat over the head that technology is the way to service your clients better. We have to be better people. We wonder why we have a 95% fail rate. So you just give someone a license that isn't even real practical use. You teach them how to pass a test. You don't prepare them. They've got no one to tell them how to do that. They've got no community. They've got no culture to wrap themselves into. They've got no deep-seated education. They've got a leader who's not doing deals. What the fuck is going on? I'm a little emotional right now just because I've been getting my ass kicked lately, personally and professionally. It's real life. You know, when you live a big life, comes with big challenges. My son, he and I having another one of our deep conversations, and at the end of it, he was like,
so you're the founder and CEO of North & Co., a real estate brokerage with close to the upper 200 agents, and you do over $1 billion a year annually in sales. But most people see people at kind of like the finish line, or they see people at this certain level. I was just curious, like, what would I need to know about you, like your earlier days in your life, to understand the man that sits in front of me today? Because I think of life as like dominoes, and each domino sets up who we are today. So what would I need to know about you?
oh man, first, thanks for having me. It's exciting. I love how we came together, and I think together we can bring a fun message, and I like your style a lot. And I think it's just kind of a more casual feel, and hopefully we can get in there and reveal some of the hard things, you know, that people don't really want to talk about. I think a good place to start is kind of, you know, what are some of the parts of the beginning? You know, for me, when I think back on you know, myself as I was kind of coming up, I'd just say post high school, because when I graduated high school, I'm 46 now. And by the way, for anybody listening who's young, it feels like it was 25 minutes ago. It just doesn't feel that long ago. I can really like close my eyes and identify and see and feel that guy. And, you know, I believed anything was possible. I just didn't believe in limitation. And I believed that there was a way around, you know, the challenge, way around the speed bump. You know, life was like solving riddles for me. And, you know, it was about an exchange of value. You know, if I needed to go somewhere and somebody could add value in the direction that I was going, I don't know really where it came from, but I understood that if I could add value first, that we could benefit each other. And really, it became one of those things where, as I moved through each of my phases of life, it was do so well at where you're at now that if you ever had to come back, they would quickly take you. And that really eliminated big risk taking for me. If I go back to selling shoes at the shoe store in college, Durango, Colorado, you know, when I left there to get a serving job at one of the nicest restaurants in town, I was nervous because I'd never worked at a restaurant before. But I also wasn't nervous because I'd done so well at the shoe store that I knew that if I ever wanted to come back, they would take me in the snap of a finger. So as long as I knew that I had a landing pad, I wasn't afraid to have to launch. And that really became something that became kind of a cornerstone or a template for how I graduated through the steps of business to get to where I'm at now.
And you said there's a quote that's been pretty impactful for you: change your story, change your life. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I love that you got that one, man. Yeah, you know, what you didn't hear me say just now is that, you know, I was the firstborn to a single 17-year-old mom that I went to 12 schools before I graduated high school. left home at 17, and so on. I've told that story 1,000 times. That is kind of same old Brian North story of how he made it, except for that story was a bit egoic, right? It was like, hey, let me tell you how bad it was so that you can go, ooh, look how good you are, or look how far you made it. And what I started to do is I started to look back at what were the intricacies within that story that molded and shaped who I am today, and why I can make it sound like it was such a tough story, but at the same time that I wouldn't change a thing. And that's because by moving a lot, it taught me how to meet people. It taught me about a love of adventure. It taught me about awareness in unique social environments. I went to tough inner city schools, and I was moving on a regular basis. And a lot of us can remember, pardon me, how tough integrating into high school or middle school culture was, elementary for that matter. And I had to do that on an annual basis. And I'm really thankful for the lessons that I learned there. The fact that my mom was young when she had me, it gave me access to somebody who understood popular culture, and I could communicate with her in a very unique way. So I had a parent to child relationship growing up that allowed me to really flourish because I had a lot of love, but I didn't really have to keep any secrets because she wasn't too far removed from, my life as a parent. So it was kind of that combination of, she was a little more like an older sister at times than she was a mom, but I had the motherly love. And so as I kind of moved through each of the segments of that old story I used to tell that was kind of a rags to riches type story, it was really like, no, check this out. So I was born to a very resourceful, hardworking individual who loved me unconditionally. And that person guided me through life and guided me through situations that taught me rich emotional and social intelligence. Going to all of those different schools taught me how to, fit into unique cultures and be able to meld in and find my way into, being a unique part of a respective culture. And ultimately, it transcended into me being able to create a culture within my company. So by changing that story, it became a lot less egoic and it became a lot more fruitful. And then it was like, hey, while it was tough, and I think the other thing about telling the tough rags to riches story, it also, the person I'm telling it to, it kind of tells a story like, hey, my situation was worse than yours. And that doesn't feel good to the person that you're talking to. So really at the end of the day, it's like, let me tell you about my unique story. And let me tell you about all the beautiful things that came out of that unique story that led themselves to me, being able to accelerate to where I am now. And so I think it's this important thing where if you want a different outcome, I don't want to be the poor kid born to the poor mom who was broke. I want to be the kid that was born to a mom who really did see anything as possible and who imparted that on me so that I could get to where I'm at now. And by just reframing the exact same story, I position myself for a better outcome.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of I'm going to butcher the quote, but it's like when you're so close to the problem, you can't kind of see it for what it is. But when you kind of take a step back, you have a different view, a different perspective on it.
Totally.
And I think that's like really big for any of us because there's all these different moments in life you're kind of just going through the mud. So where did your drive like come from? Like, why did you even decide to start a brokerage?
Two different questions. The drive came from fear of being broke. I mean, I was just afraid of not having money. I didn't like the feeling of worrying about money, but it became a disease. I mean, I remember at one point I had, healthy six figures in my checking account, which, no investment mentor is going to tell you that's the best way to, best thing to do with your money. And I was getting in a fight with my wife over what she was spending at the grocery store. You know what I mean? And we had probably $4,500 a month in expenses, and I had healthy six figures in my checking account, and I'm stressing out. That's not healthy. And I had to rework that. I had to reprogram that whole part of me, but purely my motivation came from the fear of being broke. And then start a brokerage, not far different than that story I shared with you about working at the shoe store, right? It was like, hey, shoe store is cool. I make enough money to make my bills, but there's got to be something better out there. And when I got into real estate, I was a wholesaler. So I was door knocking and telling people I could buy their house for cash, writing contracts and assigning my contracts for a fee. Then I started a real estate team, and that was market driven. wholesale deals, the deals of equity in 2006, 7, 8, 9 here in Arizona dried up. Nobody had equity in their home because the market went upside down. So I got a license and became a retail real estate agent. 2010, I started a team. And in 2014, I was at a boutique brokerage, and the owner of that boutique brokerage and I were pretty close. I was the number one producer at this small company. And he came to me and said, "Hey, it's not working out. I don't love the brokerage business. And in effect, I'm going to bankrupt the company." It was losing a lot of money. But I had 35 agents there that I really loved. I had recruited a lot of the agents. They were attracted to what I was doing in the marketplace. I was teaching a lot of classes at the brokerage. I was kind of the energy and the lifeblood of the office. And so I asked him, what would it take for me to be able to acquire that batch of agents from him? If I did, because my options at that time were either go start my own brokerage, go hang my license at another brokerage, or find something to do with this existing thing that I really loved. And we worked out a deal where I could acquire that batch of existing agents. I had to take over the full profit and loss, which was kind of a mess. I had to find a way to sublet the office space. Unfortunately, I had to let a bunch of staff go because he'd overstaffed the company, and kind of rewrite the ship on that company. And I just felt like at the end of the day, I could sell a lot of real estate and I could make a good amount of money, but I really wanted to make an impact. And I felt like there was a big missing hole in the marketplace, which was highly educated, highly skilled agents. And I felt like with what I'd learned in the wholesale space and through the down market and short sales, REOs, creative finance, that I could create a unique environment of real estate agents. And so it just kind of landed in my lap, and I took the opportunity, jumped at it, and the rest is history. So I started the brokerage in 2014 and rebranded it about 18 months later to North & Co. And here we are now.
I want to double click on that highly skilled, highly educated, because one of the biggest things in the real estate industry, like everyone talks about this all the time, is just, well, really any sales, but like it's so easy to get a license and the bar is kind of low. And then the variance of brokerages, real estate teams, the training, like there's such a disparity across the board.
Totally.
If you had a magic wand, like what would you want to change in like the training, or what did you start to do? Because you said you were giving presentations and stuff, so I was just curious.
Still teaching a lot of classes and still doing that. I mean, right now I think that the biggest miss in residential real estate brokerage is personal development. I think we are so oversaturated with CE classes and being beat over the head that technology is the way to service your clients better. We have to be better people. I don't know another company. There's 3,000 brokerages in the state of Arizona, and I don't know one that focuses predominantly on personal development, being a better human, being healthier, sleeping better, being better in your relationships, being more patient, being a better communicator, working on getting vitamin D, being outside, being in nature, journaling more, breath work, whatever it is that you need to be working on that's going to get you to a base. I mean, in my opinion, it's the most stressful industry in the world. I mean, I don't know a more I'm sure that's an overstatement because it's like, right, you're not a military soldier at war, but relative to startup entrepreneurship, residential real estate brokerage is brutal because you have so much competition. In the state of Arizona, there's 50,000 active licensees, and they say it's the second most awarded license to the driver's license, right? I mean, the competition, there's so many people, and the consumer just lumps anyone with a real estate license in the same category. So for me, in order to be a better prospector, in order to be a better leader, in order to be a better manager, hirer, firer, to be better with your clients, we have to be better humans. And for me, I think that's the biggest miss in the industry right now. After that, I think that there's a huge miss I think brokerage has sabotaged itself. It's a race to the bottom on fees. And it's a really easy model. If the agent takes all the money, then the brokerage has to take all the time. Those are the only two resources you can really share, are time equal to education, skill, or personal development or comfort. And so if there's no exchange of dollars, then there can be no exchange of time. And so at the end of the day, you've got, like you mentioned, the no barrier to entry. Most brokerage owners, and obviously I'm going to say not me, but most aren't out doing deals. I mean, I hear this thing about competing broker being a bad thing, that you work with a broker who does deals and that's a competing broker is a bad thing. I'm like, then who are you learning from, right? If the owner, if the captain driving the ship isn't out doing deals and teaching you classes from shit they learned in 1972, then like, how are you getting any better? So now you've got a no barrier to entry to get in. The schooling in Arizona, they teach you how to pass the test. Literally, when you're in class, like, hey, this is real life. This is how you pass the test. You know what I mean? So literally, they're helping you pass the test, and then we have, as brokerage, have conditioned our agents to go to the cheapest place, at least generally speaking. And then from there, if you go to the cheapest place, you're not learning, and then we wonder why we have a 95% fail rate, and we're not focusing on personal development at all. So you just give someone a license that isn't even real practical use. You teach them how to pass a test. You don't prepare them for, so nobody's going to wake them up in the morning, right? They're an entrepreneur now. So they've got to go to bed early, and they got to wake up early, and they got to feed themselves better, and they've got no one to tell them how to do that. They've got no community. They've got no culture to wrap themselves into. They've got no deep-seated education. They've got a leader who's not doing deals. What the fuck is going on? You know what I mean? That's our industry right now. So
there's a lot there to unpack. But before we get into like the team and brokerage side, I wanted to talk about like more on the kind of like the agent side a little bit, because I think you have a unique experience. So like almost as if you're talking to like your younger self, because again, kind of going back to the earlier quote, like when you're in the mud, it's sometimes hard to see the way out. Like we all know we need to wake up early. We all know how to get in shape. We all know like all these things, but yet most of us don't do it. So how do you teach something that is as hard as like personal development, sleep, fitness? Like what is the tactical things, or like what is the shift that needs to be made?
Yeah, I mean, you have to have somebody who's a practitioner. That's the first thing. You know what I mean? One of my mentors used to say, Brian, there's practitioners and there's theorists. Be a practitioner. And so for me, you've got to have leadership that is practicing what it is that they're showing. We were double parked this morning, my fault, not yours. I was teaching a breathwork class in the brokerage this morning, and I had to leave a half an hour early, but it was a pre-recorded breath session that I lead. Everyone puts their headphones in, pushes play at the same time, and I've got 10 of my agents, 12 of my agents, and they're doing breath work right now while I'm on with you. So you've got to be a practitioner. But I have a curriculum that I'm working on. It's complete at this point. I've taught it a couple times, and it's called Small Win Theory. And it's helping people understand in our business, agents, leadership at the end of every given year says, hey, we're going to have a big goal planning session. We're going to reflect on the prior year and set our goals for the coming year. And usually that goal for the coming year, people are writing down like 3 times their gross income. I made $100,000 last year, I want to make $300,000. I made $300,000 last year, I want to make $1 million. I made $1 million last year, I make $3 million. Well, that's big win theory, right? Big win theory is like, okay, you want to make $1 million. Like, what are you going to do different? And usually as you start to go back to reverse engineering that, if you start going backward, you're like, well, I just have to double down on my activity and I have to have better systems. I'm going to say something really generic like that, right? Like, okay, so let me ask you this. How much energy did you have at the end of last year when you made whatever you made? Fuck, the tank was pretty empty. It was a pretty tough year. Okay, so you're going to triple down on your activity and have better systems when you're already on a half tank of gas, so you can triple it? Well, yeah. Well, how are you going to do that? Where are you going to start? And as we start moving back through that, I get us back down to small win theory, which is like a compilation of small wins are the things that equal big wins. And then I've got to lead by example, and I've got to show people that. So for me, it's, I'm literally out trail running with my agents, I'm road running with my agents. We do sponsor Rock and Roll Half Marathon. I have a bunch of agents that go out there and run. We have nutritionists that come in and talk at the brokerage. I'm teaching breathwork class. But then it's that thing of trying to teach consistency. And from there, it's just what can we do internally to create internal mechanisms through small groups, mastermind sessions, accountability groups, to be working on those small wins and be sharing where you're noticing over time that things are changing in your personal life, because you have to change those micro things in order to be able to triple down on your activity. So it's not an easy thing to do. It's boring. It's not glitz. There's no glamour. No one's going to post on social media and be like, I drank an extra glass of water today, and I know that 49 days from now, it's going to have a big effect on the way my skin looks. And then when I see my skin looking better, I'm going to look in the mirror and have more confidence. And that's going to translate to how I felt when I walked in a listing appointment today, different than it was 9 months ago. No one's going to post that on social media. It's not glamorous, but it's the thing that really makes the difference if you're going to get on in this world.
Yeah. So is the small wins in some form or fashion like the small thing theory is like uh go to the gym 3 days a week or like run 10 miles this week, like having small like goals that you can keep yourself accountable to weekly or
Yeah.
daily.
The really simple thing would be, what's the one thing in your life right now that you think could make the biggest impact? I'll go right out one for me that comes up consistently, which is drinking less, right? I don't have a drinking problem, but rest assured, if I have 2 really good whiskey cocktails tonight, tomorrow morning, I'm going to feel less than I did this morning when I did, right?
Yep.
Then I'm going to slog through the day, so I'm not going to be as good through the day. And by the way, I may have told myself today that I want to exercise tomorrow morning, but I stay out late having 2 cocktails tonight. What are the chances? I'm like, I'll make it up on Friday. Pretty good. So now I skip my exercise. But so then the thing is like, okay, I skip my exercise, which is where I get my serotonin and dopamine dump, right? And now I don't get that. So I'm in a lesser mood. Then I have to encounter a challenge during the day. And that challenge, I react poorly and I create a rift with one of my colleagues because I didn't react like a professional. Then I get home, my kids get home from school and they're frustrated and I'm bummed at them. So the small win theory would be like, okay, so if I went to only drinking on weekends and I cut it out during the week, how does that impact my total life, including my exercise, my relationships, my sleep patterns, things like that? So does it mean I quit drinking forever? No. It might mean, last year I did a thing where I only drank if I was out of town, right? And it was like, yeah, if I'm going to travel, like if I go to Italy, I want to drink a limoncello or a great glass of, of red wine. But if I'm in town, like, do I need to have 2 or 3, drinks 3 or 4 times a week? Like, I just don't. And so I played with that. And then what it did is it made going on trips, like, traveling super fun because it was like, oh man, I'm gonna have a drink, that kind of thing. But again, might be for exercise. Man, I've just been lacking confidence. If I just do a walk around the block for the next 30 days, that's going to change my confidence. So it's this thing where like small, consistent action leads to big results.
Yeah. And I like that. You're not necessarily trying to cut it. You're trying to replace it or move it or like, because when you try to cut something like cold turkey, it's very tough to switch a pattern like that.
You got it. Replace. It's either find something else to do. My son, he's on his phone all the time. And I said to him, every time you go to pick up your phone to scroll through, to doom scroll, whatever you're going to scroll through, go on a walk. You're trading dark, non-natural, artificial light, and blue light in your eyes for vitamin D and oxygenation. And so he started doing that. He told me he didn't do it forever, but he started doing it. He did it for like, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 weeks. And was like, Dad, I'm feeling so much better. I'm like, this is it. You know what I mean? We just have to be self-aware. Self-awareness is probably one of my favorite tools in the world.
Yeah. I think that's a huge skill to like work at, the self-awareness. How impactful is having those micro accountability groups within the brokerage, like whether it's different chat groups or making those micro teams? Like, how important is that to you in making these goals?
It's important for everything. I mean, our culture is probably one of the things that's transcended the whole market. Our marketing, I think, gets a lot of pub, and our culture gets a lot of publicity. And really, it's that thing, where we use the term open source. We're an open source culture, and everybody can get everything from everybody. We have a minimum standard of production, so our agents have to do 4 million in sales volume or 12 units a year. So you have every agent's a full-time practitioner, and then every one of those agents has to share. They have to share, anything that they learn, anything that's working for them in their business. So to know that you're surrounded by leadership that are practitioners, but you're also surrounded by 285 of your friends who are all out trying to outdo you, but that will share anything, those micro groups at this point are created without me even knowing. Everything from philanthropy. We had a group in the office the other day, probably 15 agents. One of our agents' brothers died from a fentanyl overdose. And he came in and he was making what he called safe kits or safety kits for users. So basically it's like, we're going to go hand out these kits that are like clean needles and clean like alcohol and stuff like that, which is gnarly to be like, so are you condoning the use? And it's like, no, we're not condoning the use. We're just going to make it so that if people are going to use that, they're safe. And I had 15 of my agents in here supporting him making these safe kits. And then they went and drove around town and handed out these kits, right? So it's things like that are happening now without me even seeing it. And that's when you really know that a culture has kind of transcended even what you designed for it. So it's critically important for camaraderie, togetherness, and ultimately, what we're all here for, which is producing in real estate.
Yeah. And the reason I ask is because I started kind of open sourcing like everything that I'm doing. Like we have everything in Slack. I started creating Slack channels, and I used to just like text myself or email myself or whatever, like myself, all these things I was like learning, watching, etc. And I was like, this isn't really benefiting the group if I'm just sharing it with myself. So like, what if I created all these channels and I just share what I'm learning? And some people will pick up on it. Some people may not even look at it, but at least they have the chance to kind of see like what I'm working on or what I'm learning. Like, what's your thought on like, do you guys create those, like, it sounds like you have something similar in a way to that, right?
We have an intern. We use Pumble. I don't know if you're familiar. It's a lot like Slack. It's just a different app, and there's channels in there for everything. I mean, anything you could think of. We have like Angie's List for subcontractors. We have vacant homes that are available for open houses this week, and then all the way down to things we've been learning. Practitioner type stuff. We have a tab in there called Deal Makers, and it's got new language for contract writing subject to the current market conditions. Seller, a lot of creative finance, seller carryback, mortgage wrap stuff happening right now. And so there's a lot of tips and tricks and hints on things that are working in there. So that's Pumble. And then we're an agent top brokerage. So a lot of our classes are taught by our top producing agents. They're willing to share everything. So that helps. And then, we always say if you ever reached out to an agent, no matter their production level, and they were unwilling to meet with you and teach, it would be grounds for automatic severance. So anybody can meet anybody anytime, no matter what their production level is in the company.
Okay. And the reason I asked is just selfishly curious, like as someone who's trying to come up and like build a culture of like openness, like have that like radical transparency, like what are some of the things that I should have in place, whether it's kind of like having something like that with those channels or like the trainings that you do, like what are the things that you think are foundational that help build that culture?
Yeah, I'll share like a really fun little thing that we did at our, so we do our once a month brokerage meeting is really important. It's a big, family reunion. That's a Keller Williams term, but nevertheless, it is what it is. I mean, we have out of 285 agents, we've got 150 agents that come every single month. So we have to do it at a church now, which is pretty cool. But we did it, we do little things there where we have something called the Golden Ruler Award. And it basically is who gave the most. It's a People's Choice Award. Who gave the most to the culture every single month, voted by the people, and leadership can't get the award, right? So it's just agents, and it's voted on by the other agents. And then we do a video of them where we ask them things like, what's your celebrity crush? What's your favorite pizza topping? If you could visit anywhere in the world, what would it be? And it's to humanize them, right? Because a lot of times the person who gets picked is a $75 million producer, and you got a $4 million producer in the room that's like, that person's untouchable. And then you find out that, one of our elder stateswomen has a crush on Eminem, and, it creates like a fun little, banter between them or something. But the Golden Ruler Award is something we've been doing for 7 years that awards open source, right? It rewards the behavior. We did a thing where we had $2,000 at our brokerage meeting. And we said, I had it in my hand. And I said, watch what happens. I said, if you have any question in real estate right now that you're having a challenge with, raise your hand and ask it. So someone raised their hand and they said, I'm just having a hard time finding deals for investors right now. I said, is there a wholesaler in the room? And another one raised their hand. I said, here's $100. You guys go to lunch on me and share wholesale deals. Like, great. Anyone else have a question? Now everyone's raising their hand, right? Like, raise your hand like, hey, I'm having a hard time getting people to sign into my open houses. Like, I'll let you, shadow me at my open houses. No problem. Here's $100. Get lunch delivered to the open house on me. So I went through and set up 20 $100 lunch meetings. And it was like $100, not like, here's a Starbucks gift card. It was like, go have a banger steak lunch on me times 20. And that was to inspire people going, hey, like, you guys, just so you know, if you have a question, there's someone in the room who wants to help you. And I handed out $2,000 in 4 minutes. And it was like, there you go. You have 20 people who had a need and 20 people who wanted to share. Let's see what comes back of this. Then we had people come back to the room in the next brokerage meeting and start to share what were their biggest takeaways. And you know what? Guess what? Most of the biggest takeaways weren't about what they learned in real estate. It was like, dude, Brian's such a good guy, or Jenny's such an amazing gal. Like, I had no idea. I didn't even know. Oh my gosh, our sisters went to college together, like that sort of thing. So we didn't even really realize what was going to come out of that whole thing. But it's this thing of just consistently inspiring people to get in touch with each other internally and finding creative ways to do that.
Nice. That's awesome. So you trained like, and even like yourself, you just deal with a lot of agents at scale. So I was curious, what are the like most important like skills and traits that you try to train them, like personal development, or try to work on to help kind of shape them into the agent that they can be?
Yeah, sales skill, actually, like the skill of selling. We have a class called Sales Skills that we teach. It's kind of a hybrid. We talk about the sales cycle, which is meet and greet, build rapport, build value, overcome objections, and ask the closing question. Those 5 steps. And you have to do all 5, and your closing ratio will go up 95%. And so we go through, and then we'll take that model of sales skills and we'll role play real-time challenges that people have had in the marketplace. Hey, I went on a listing appointment the other day. They asked me if I would list the house for 0.5% of commission. How do I overcome that? I'm like, well, great. Let's start from the top. Like, I'm going to walk in the house. You're going to give me a proper meet and greet. We're going to do some rapport building. I'm going to build some value. And then you're going to tell me you want me to list for 0.5%. I'm going to overcome the objections. And then I'm going to ask the closing question, right? So sales skills is a big one that we work on. And then overall business development. There's every brokerage out there is going to say we have leads, or we've got great technology, or we can get you on a team that'll give you leads, or, but for us, it's really about, let's build a business. And so we start with a vision. A vision for a business is like, I always start with the question of, what do you want to be when you grow up? And really design out your business, which is like, if I always say, pretend that you heard 2 people at a coffee shop talking about your business. You overheard them. What would you want them to say? Like, that's a really crafty and creative way to get people to start to dream about, like, well, they would say that I was hardworking and I was professionally dressed and that I was a lot of fun and that I was vibrant, and, they liked that I didn't work on weekends, and like, you're like, write this down, right? It's hard for us to get going in that space, but when you give them this framework, as if you heard someone, they'll start to open up. And so you can kind of write out that vision, and then naturally there's a component of that vision. How much money do you want to make? And do you want to have a team of people? And, what do you want them to do? What do you want your brand to be known for? And then we build a sales plan, which is how do we reverse engineer that economic outcome, right? I want to make $300,000. Great. What's your average price point, average percentage of commission per deal? Work that back to how many units you have to do. Then what's the activity you have to do? So you got your vision, which is the big macro. This is what it looks and feels like at the end of the day. Then you have your sales plan, which is like, I've got to do 22 closings. And then it's like, what's your activity list? So I do open houses, I cold call, and repeat referral. And then it's like, great. So let's break those into thirds. How are you going to get 7 from each of those over a 1-year period of time? And now you've got your marching orders for how to go to work. And then it goes back to those accountability groups. And then being able to open yourself up like, hey, I tried cold calling for the first time. I'm 3 months in. I haven't got a lead. What do I do? And, we built internal mechanisms at the brokerage. Monica Courier, we call her air traffic control. She knows what every agent in the brokerage is doing. So if you have someone who's a cold call specialist and someone's just started cold calling for the first time and they're having a hard time, they would call Monica and say, who do I call to get some scripts or to get some tips on cold calling better? And she would put them in touch together and set up a lunch for them. Back to open source, they go meet, they get some upgraded tips. They feel like we're adding value as a brokerage. They're back to cold calling. They're now converting some leads, and we're on our way. So it's really a combination of business development and sales skills. After that, we can go extract from the market at large. You want a good CRM? We have a CRM that's good enough. There's no best CRM for an enterprise suite because everybody does it different. So we want to help you build your own unique business, and then go, maybe you don't need a CRM. Maybe you can run your business on a legal pad. You know what I mean? But and then we'll help fill in those internal mechanisms from there. You might want to hire an assistant. We'll go through the hiring process with them. We'll help them, draft out their roles and responsibilities and post their job on a job posting. We'll go through resume sort with them and show them how to sort resumes. We'll sit in on interviews with them and help them interview their prospective assistant, and then ultimately help them make the choice and then hold them accountable in their management skills. So really heavy business development and sales skill are really where we anchor in, along with the personal growth, personal development.
That's awesome. I like the reverse engineering. It's something that someone else, another big brokerage that I interviewed, did that they do as well, as kind of like bring it back to what actually matters to them, how they're going to do it. And then I like the air traffic controller thing too. That's a cool way to bring collaboration into the mix. So I do like marketing now, and everyone wants to know like marketing because it's the sexy thing, but I come from an actual like sales background. I don't know if you ever heard of the company Cutco, like the knife company.
Of course, you're a killer. You come from Cutco, you're a killer. Yeah.
So I sold kitchen knives for 5 years as a teenager and throughout college. And I credit most of how I came up to that because I learned a lot of the sales background, and I feel like that's something that is irreplaceable that I learned at a young age. But I see that, and I see real estate, and most people aren't necessarily taught like those sales skills. Like, so I was curious, like, what are the skills that people need to learn, or like, how can they learn the essential skills of sales? And because it's not as sexy as like marketing necessarily is, but I think it's as important or more important sometimes.
First most important thing is that people in real estate need to admit they're salespeople. I know you'll laugh because you're like, what are you talking about? But being a brokerage owner and have had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of agents come underneath my leadership, one of the most common things I hear about why people don't want to cold call or door knock is because they don't want to come across as too salesy. And I'm like, you do know you're one of the highest paid salespeople in the world, right? At least you have the ability to be. Yes. So are you waking up and going to bed at night saying you're not a salesperson? Because you're a salesperson. Now, if you ever heard me say that you need to be salesy in order to be a good salesperson, then you've never heard me speak or teach a class on sales, because it's not about hard closing, right? The number one skill first, once you're willing to admit you're a salesperson, the number one skill to me is question asking. That's number one, right? Most real estate agents, because they've had no sales training, find themselves telling themselves into sales, right? This is why you should work with me, and this is why I wouldn't take a discount on my commission, and this is why I'm the best marketer, and this is why, and it's boring. Nobody wants to listen to it, right? And by the way, I had a conversation last night. This is great. I had a phone appointment for the potential of it was a second opportunity to list a house, and they're on the phone. And they said I had never met the wife, and the wife asked me, "What are you going to do for marketing?" And I said, "Well, before I answer that question, I want to be clear that you do know that marketing just gets people to the house, right? That's all that it does. After that, you should be asking what my sales acumen is. And then you should be asking about my negotiation skills. And then you should be asking about my back-end process. Because if marketing only gets people to the house, then salesmanship gets people to write a contract. Negotiation gets you to contract acceptance, and process gets you to close, right? But we're only ever taught, because it's a money conversation as a seller, what they're really asking is, how much money are you going to spend marketing my house? That's really what they're asking, because I'm going to pay you a bunch of money to sell my house. So how much of that money that I'm going to pay you are you going to spend marketing my property? And she was like, yeah, I do have to say, it's one thing I was really disappointed in was our agent who listed the house last wasn't great at sales. And I was like, what do you mean? And she said, well, we would see her on the Ring camera. By the way, everybody, take note of the cameras. You know what I mean? You're being watched while you're doing your job. She goes, so we would see them on the camera, and she would start talking to people about where they could put a pool in the backyard but the people weren't asking about a pool. And I was like, yeah, that's actually anti-selling. That's unselling somebody. And I said, at the end of the day, what makes a good salesperson is what we would call, and I'm sure you did it in Cutco, a feature benefit presentation, right? That's what we called it, feature benefit. And when I got on in sales, it was like, I'll use the example as what I used with them last night. If a couple comes in to buy a new car and she's pregnant with triplets, horsepower probably is not a concern of hers, right? Number one concern is going to be safety. So if I'm the guy on the car lot that's like, hey, come check out this two-seater that has 600 horsepower when she's pregnant with triplets, I'm unselling. It doesn't matter that it's my favorite car or not, or that I think every house should have a pool. It's really about what's the safest vehicle that has room for 3 car seats, that is, find out their budget, that's economical for them, that's comfortable, et cetera, and then take them that car and show them the features and the benefits that serve their lifestyle. And then when I get to objections, when they say, this one's a little bit out of our budget, it goes back to question asking. Like, no problem. I totally understand. I have a budget when I buy a car too. So what is the best budget for you? Well, if we could get it at this, we would do it. So let me hear you. I heard you correctly. If you could get it for this price, you would do it. Yes, it's just question. Everything I'm rephrasing in the form of a question. And I think if people would just simplify their sales process and just ask better, more questions instead of telling themselves to the finish line, you would convert so many more sales. And it's not salesy at all. It's just me going, can I clarify that this is what you need? And if I could provide it, you would take it home. That's it. It's not slick. It's just doing your job.
The feature benefit tie down.
Yeah, you got it.
So, do you know who Phil Jones is?
I know.
He's kind of what you alluded to at the beginning of all of this, was like everyone looks at sales as like a negative thing, and he kind of talks about it as it's more like you're getting them to talk, you're asking them questions, you're digging deeper. It's more like you're a consultant than you are an actual salesperson.
I mean, look, if you come into an open house, you're looking for a house.
Yep.
Right? So now let's get rid of whatever you want to tagline me. My job is to find the best one for you in inventory. So at that point, it's just a matter of asking questions and then going, hey, here's based on my ability to listen. So asking questions would be number one. Active listening would be number two. And then build a good reputation. That way people will respond to you in our business. If I don't happen to have the property, I've done a ton of deals where I was at a home tour or I drove by an open house and saw a house that might work for a prospective client. And I can call that agent and say, hey, these people stopped in my open house. If there's a way to throw me a referral fee on something, great. If not, I can't sell them the house, but I think it's a perfect house for them. And it gives me an opportunity to build a relationship with an agent long term, securing reputation along the way as well. So,
yeah. And I want to get into like the team side and like building a team, building a brokerage, because I feel like going from 30 agents to 300, there's a lot of lessons along the way, those steps. The biggest question that like everyone always asks is like, how do you get leads? Like, how do you get more listings? How do you get more buyers? So you work with a lot of agents. How can people get more deals? I guess is a good place to start.
Man, I'm the worst guy to ask this question to. I don't know any other way. I only know one way. And so it's not helpful. My way is you have to have more real estate conversations than anybody else. That's it. Like, I don't know how I'm still active. We have a sync account here at the company, Commissions Inc. And we get 250 leads a month. And those leads convert at a 6 month to 1 year timeline, right? I mean, you got to call 57 times and you got to follow up in a CRM like a madman. We have agents here. We have a husband-wife team, Molly and Jared. Majority of their deals come from social media. I've tried to trick the world into sending me their information through social media. I just have never generated leads through social. They run a $40 million team and most of their deals are run through social organically. I door knocked and cold called and people are like, I'm so sick of hearing that. And I'm like, my thing is, dude, at the end of the day, you know what I did? Let's go back to that first question you asked me, which was like, before we talk to you about now, What would I need to know about you then? One of my biggest ones was find the person who has what you have and go do what they did.
Yeah.
Right. And my thing is, it's like, here, you said 30 agents to get to 300 agents. There's a lot of lessons in there. I mean, if somebody was like, I want 300 agents, what do? I'm like, get on the phone and start calling agents. How many? 50 a day. That's what we did to grow the company. I called 50 a day while I was selling every day. I have 130 phone numbers loaded into my Mojo dialer right now that I'm going to go cold call. Right. And here's the deal. I'm going to cold call lots, what I think are teardowns in the most affluent neighborhood in all of Maricopa County. An acre of raw land is $3 million. Okay. And then someone's going to take that acre and they're going to build a 9 to 12,000 square foot spec house and sell it for $13 million. If I find that piece of dirt cold calling, I'm going to be the listing agent on the back end at 2.5 points, maybe 3 points on the list side. So on a $12 million deal, at 3 points, I'm looking at making 360 G's, you know what I mean? On that deal. And I'm going to make on the 3 million deal on the front end, I'm going to make 100 grand. So someone's like, I don't want a cold call. And I'm like, well, great. You can't door knock vacant dirt. You know what I mean? I don't know how you're going to find an 80-year-old, heir to a piece of dirt that lives in Minnesota on your social media. And so I was like, well, I don't want to do that. I'm like, I don't want a cold call either. But you know what I do want to do? I don't want to do $75,000, $300,000 deals. I want to do $12, $13 million deals, right? And make a few million bucks. So it's that thing of like, to me, it's like when we go back to that sales plan and you're like, I need to do 22 deals in this price point to get this life over here. At the end of the day, it's like, if it's anything other than going out and shaking hands and say, do you want to sell a house? Do you want to buy a house? Do you want to sell a house? Do you want to buy a house? You're waiting on somebody to come and transact with you, right? I'm waiting for someone to come into my social media. I'm waiting for someone to come to my website. I'm waiting for someone to come, to my office. I'm waiting for someone to call me. The only way I know how to make it happen is you go make it happen. So for me, it's such an old story. But at the end of the day, I just don't think people want to do it because it's uncomfortable. And if they would look themselves in the mirror and say, I'm a salesperson and I'm willing to do what it takes to have what he has, fastest path to do it is have more conversations than me.
Yeah, I think it's so underrated because like one of the things that I took from Cutco was like, instead of trying to learn how to sell $1,000 set of knives or move from $1,000 to a $3,000 or $5,000 average order, I was like, who's already kind of doing it? And then how are they doing it? And let me learn from them. And I just kind of went to the person who was like number one, like for selling the most amount. And I was like, that's the quickest and surest path. Just model what he did. And
so
I think
what he did was not easy. What he did was not comfortable. I guarantee it. Because if it was, everybody would do it. Right? I mean, I have more agents who want to sit down and ask me, Brian, what should I do to make 100 grand? And I'm like, do this. And they're like, well, I don't really want to do that. I'm like, okay, we'll do this. And it usually has to do with going out, meeting people, capturing phone numbers and following up like a madman. Right? I don't know another way to do it.
And it's funny because every agent asks, how do I get into luxury? How do I increase my price point? And you're just like, well, I only contact people who I actually want to do business with.
I learned that one early. It was when I wanted to increase my price point. I wanted to get my price point to $1 million. And I didn't even know where to start. I was afraid of people who own $1 million houses. I'm not even kidding. That's like a real statement. And I was like, oh, well, I just need to find, listings usually are referral based deals, right? For the most part. So my thing was, all right, I'll start with buyers. And I'm like, how do I find $1 million buyers? It's like, I got $1 million open houses and it's not compliant. I didn't know it at the time, but I started calling other agents and other brokerages and seeing if I could hold their $1 million houses open. And that's how I started building my buyer list of people in the $1 million price point. Ultimately, they would buy and then they would become future sellers. And I did a good job for them. So they would call me when it's time to sell. That's how I increased my price point.
Yeah. And I think that's like a huge thing because if you want the business, there's ways to like get yourself into that market as well and force yourself into that market. I kind of want to double down on what you said a second ago, where I think a lot of the times people are they don't do the work of following up, or we don't like follow up with people sometimes because we think we don't know what to say, or we think we're coming off salesy or whatever. And that's why we don't probably follow up as much as we probably should.
All that I know, which is I think most people don't follow up because they're afraid to sound salesy. They don't want to be perceived as pushy. And the reason I know that to be true is because one of the more frequent questions I've ever been asked in sales training is, how many times following up is too many times? That question tells you a story all by itself, right? Which is, if I'm asking the question of how many times do I follow up before it's too much, it means I'm already thinking about, when do I become pushy? What's the number of calls before I become pushy? And I think that's one of the bigger challenges, is we just get in our own way. I have this guy right now who I got to a place where I've sent him a written offer, off market, property I door knocked, and he gave me a counter. He sent me an email that said, I think you're off by $1 million. Here's the two comps I found as a seller. And so I raised my price at $500,000. I'm buying it from him. I raised the price at $500,000, and he won't respond to me. And I'm like, I call him every day. Every single day. I've called him for the last 3 weeks, every day. And I'm super nice. Hey, Mr. Johnson, it's Brian North. Beautiful out here in Arizona today. Haven't heard from you in a while. Give me a call back. Just trying to find a number that works for you. Let me know when it's good. He hasn't given me a number. He just said, I think you're off by $1 million. Here's some comps. So I sent him a long list of comps back, and I sent him some counter offer stuff back, but I can't get him to give me a number. And I'm just not ever going to stop calling him until he says, stop calling me, or gives me a number.
What are some of the biggest lessons that you had to learn growing the team and growing the brokerage?
Don't take anything personal. You have an agent who joins your company because they're in a tough financial position. 18 months later, they bought a new house, they're married, and are pregnant with their first child. They're doing so well that they now have a cocaine addiction. And you show up at their house at 1 a.m. on a Saturday night because they're having a hard time. They can't think of anybody else to call but you. And so you show up there to console them, make sure they're okay. And 6 months later, they leave and go to another brokerage because there's a better split. Hard not to take that one personal, but you can't take it personal, right? So, at the end of the day, the business is a living organism. It comes and goes. And in the brokerage business, we're responsible for scaling emotion. We'd love to think as brokerage owners that we have a product. We don't have a product. We're a service. And if our clients don't like our service, they leave. And all it does is offer an opportunity to create a better service. Sometimes for me, I'm constantly working to create a better service. And sometimes it's that our agents don't want a change. They want it to remain the same. So I've got to find, how do I fall in love with staying true to who we are as a company, and that we're constantly going to be evolving and growing, while not taking it personal when it doesn't match up with all 300 people at all times. It's really challenging. It's really hard not to take it personal, especially when I shared with you, I feel like I'm in the personal development business. I dig into our people, and we've created a very intimate culture. And it's unfortunately, it's more frequent than the alternative that people leave when you least expect it. And so don't take it personal. Things get hard. And with my business partners, we have really challenging conversations. We have to tell each other, you're not good right now. You're not good at what you used to do. You need to step your game up. If you need time off, take time off. I'll pick up the slack while you get your mind right, but you need to get it right. You need to come back and be ready for the game. There's no crying in the boardroom. So, it's challenging. But you can't take it personal. That'd be rule number one, is nothing that happens here is personal. I can give personally, but that's my choice. When people leave or when they make a move within the company, they do it for themselves. They don't do it against me. So that would be number one.
So curious, how do you scale emotion then?
I don't know. I'm trying. I think we've done a pretty good job of scaling emotion. I mean, we got, little things like when you have 300 agents, say this could sound egoic. It's not, but everybody wants to be my friend. You know what I mean? And it can't be that. I can't be friends with everybody. So I send out an email, like kind of a daily blog post to the brokerage 3 days a week. And it's my life lesson from the day before. What did I learn about life from the day before? It's very vulnerable, right? There isn't anything I really don't share. And that's a way to scale connection, because 300 people can read that email and we can have a connection. And then I can get email responses from them where they say they're having a tough go, or they've gone through something similar, or that it was divine timing that I sent that email. I utilize social media. I follow every one of our agents on social media, and then I regularly in the morning and in the evening scroll through and keep a mental inventory of what's happening in their lives, so that when I see them, even if it's a week, 2 or 3 weeks down the road, I can say, hey, I saw you guys got a new puppy. Congratulations. And that's a way to create connection. And then, internally, building a leadership team that knows that we're in a very tough business, and that it's okay for our agents to be emotional and for us to show up for them when things get tough. And that's probably our number one job. If we can beat them to the punch of recognizing they're having a tough go before they have to come to us and tell us, that creates safety and security for people, and that creates stickiness within the culture. Those are some of the things that we do on a regular basis to continue to work to scale emotion, but it's a moving target.
Nice. I really like that, like, email too. That's really good.
It's very valuable 40 minutes of my morning for sure.
Might have to steal that.
Oh, man. Yeah. That's why I do these. That's why I'm on here with you. Anything I can share with you, or you can share with me, so we can be better. I think we're on the front end of an industrial revolution of our industry. Residential real estate brokerage is in a lot of trouble right now.
I agree.
Low barrier to entry, race to the bottom on fees. Class action copycat lawsuits are going to devastate some independents who are doing some really good things. They're going to devastate some big companies that are doing good things. But on the backside of that, there's going to really be an opportunity. I think no cooperative compensation is going to be difficult for agents, but it's going to be a really good thing for the industry at large. It's going to elevate the level of professionalism. A buyer-broker getting a buyer-broker agreement signed with a buyer who has to consider being willing to pay out of pocket for their commission. You better be a good buyer's agent, right? If that person's going to pay a big chunky fee out of their pocket to pay for your service. So to me, I think right now it's happening, with this whole copycat lawsuit thing, it's going to completely redistribute the value of teams. It's going to redistribute the value of brokerages. But you've got to be nimble right now, and you've got to.
Yeah. And I know earlier you said, like, you don't really sell a product, you sell a service, but I actually think what's funny is, like, when you build a team, when you build even a brokerage, definitely, like, the brokerage is a product, and what you're providing as services, that's kind of like part of the product in a way. Like, you're building this product that people want to buy into, they want to be a part of. So I was curious, with all the issues, like, you see all these brokerages, you see everything in the industry, what is the vision for, like, what you think is at least your ideal brokerage that you want to build?
Yeah, ideal brokerage for me would be a lot more like a commercial real estate firm than a residential firm, right? Commercial real estate brokerage, the superstars of commercial, you can't break into that book of business unless you stand next to one of those guys or gals, right? And they call them seniors and juniors in commercial, at least here in Arizona. And, you go work as a junior for a senior in commercial real estate, you might be a junior for 3 to 5 years, just cold calling a book of business and seeing if you could drum up buyers for a particular office building listing that you have. And if you close that deal, you pay 50% to that team lead. And that team lead is such a beast in the marketplace that you would never leave them. You hitch your horse to them basically for the rest of your career, and it becomes a succession plan, right? And then the brokerage itself, there's a reason that independent brokerage in the commercial world has had such a hard time breaking through. You basically have Cushman Wakefield, Lee and Associates, CBRE, JLL. There's 5 or 6 that dominate 90% of the market share. And it's because the brokerage house gets access to the bulk of the listings, right? And when you operate, form, and function that way in the industry, you limit choices. And I think agents have too many choices. And when you have too many choices, agents then become susceptible to their emotion, right? If one of my agents leaves today, he can come back tomorrow. Like, why wouldn't I? You know what I mean? Like, fuck it, I'm out of here. I'm going to go try something new and see if it works out. But what they don't realize is it takes 6 months to get going at the new spot. You've got to get a new lay of the land. How does the broker work? How does the transaction management system work? What is marketing compliance? Now the excitement wears off and I'm just back to prospecting like I was the day before. Then all of a sudden, like, shit, I don't like it. I want to move back to my old brokerage. And I do, and that's another 6 months. And like, it's just a mess. You know what I mean? And it's because there's too many options and there's no stickiness. There's no loyalty and emotion, for me, creating a brokerage that would be people who really are highly educated and involved in navigating their own emotion, right? Being hyper aware and being able to settle into routine boring. What works in entrepreneurship is routine boringness, right? Doing the same thing over and over again really, really well. And in residential real estate, everybody's looking for a widget. They're looking for a fast track to make money, and there isn't one, right? I mean, you ask me, how do people get more deals? And I'm like, outdoors and cold call. Same fucking shit everybody's been saying forever. You know what I mean? It's like, and I've changed that. I mean, what I say now is more real estate conversations because I want to challenge somebody. If you think you can have more real estate conversations, not cold calling and door knocking than me, let's go heads up. You can't. So I'll say more real estate conversations so you can succumb to your own BS. But at the end of the day, the fastest track to more opportunities is the door knock and cold call. So, for me, I would start here. We have a minimum production standard, so no new agents. Look at whatever this bubble is. No new agents.
That's fun.
I know, isn't it? No new agents. If you're going to be a new agent, you're on a huge split with the brokerage. You're like a 40-60, and you have to do what I say. You can't come to the brokerage and try and revolutionize the industry and be a liability to me, right? And your colleagues. You make us look bad, right? There needs to be a barrier to entry, a significant boot camp, or there needs to be something where you earn your way into sales as a junior. You become part of a team. Teams need to be trained differently. Teams need to offer more so they can create a more sticky environment. The brokerage needs to do a better job of procuring a reputation, ultimately leading to leads in the marketplace so that that you've got something, you can wrap your arms around there. But it really is just about a higher level of professional and creating a more sticky environment and ultimately having people that are hyper personally aware so that they're delivering their best selves in the marketplace.
Well, that's great because few people, I should say, like when you start hiring and recruiting, like you learn the cost of hiring and recruiting and like it's very costly, but I didn't even think about it like necessarily like what you just said, where it's like it's costly for the agent to like hire and recruit themselves to different brokerages. Like you cost yourself time, money, and it's a pretty big investment every time you switch.
Huge. To me, it's life or death. You can make one switch that seems easy, like, oh, I'm going to go over there and it's going to be less expensive. And you get over there and it doesn't work. And you had your last bit of savings and you don't like it. And now you're kind of bummed out that you made the decision you did. You're working against yourself. And then you got to make the switch again. And maybe you get a deal in escrow and now you can't switch because that brokerage gets a big, chunk of that deal that comes out. It's a mess, man. It's a mess. And the bummer part is like right now, what I've seen brokerage, lend itself toward now is, gimmicks. It's like, just, I know that there's some benefit in some of the downline stuff. If you're new to a brokerage that has recruiting models, there can be some really big advantages there. You know what I mean? But, if I look at some of those models, generally speaking, and I'm being very general, I'm not picking on anyone in particular, but it's like, I hang my license there, so I work there. Okay. And then there's a thing that says for every commission I make, I can put a percentage of my commission into stock. So now I'm investing my dollars into stock in the company I work for. And then I'm relying on a dividend from people that I'm bringing into that company who also now work at the company. When I think about my mentors who taught me to invest, one of the first rules of investing is diversify. That's the opposite of diversification, right? So now I hang my license there. I rely on a dividend that's paid by the people I recruit to be there. I put a portion of my commissions into stock that's there. What happens if that company has a bad day? I'm fucked. You know what I mean? And so there's part for me where I just feel like, and look, I think that those models are good for some agents. But what's a problem is that we're not teaching agents how to ask questions to make moves to those companies. There's no path to have them be able to ask and consider, why wouldn't I? And because most of those moves are predicated on emotion, they get really excited before they get unexcited. And so they don't want to hear why they wouldn't or shouldn't go, because it's exciting to move and stir the pot, because new feels better than stale and old. So it's an interesting time.
Yeah, it kind of goes to like the Tony Robbins quote. I'm going to butcher this. Like the level, or maybe it's Jim Rohn, like the level of your questions determines like the level of your success. I completely butchered that quote.
I mean, I don't know the exact quote, but I know where you're going. You know what I mean? It's like, if you're just like, so do you guys make money here? Yep, we do. And so like, how does it work? Well, if you get 10 people, then you don't have to sell real estate anymore. Really? I'm in. That's not going to determine your success. Like, if you get 10 people, how does that work? How does that break down? But I like selling real estate. Why wouldn't I want to sell real estate? Can you guys make me a better real estate practitioner? Because you are a real estate brokerage, right? Like, by the way, how has your stock performed compared to the S&P 500 year over year for the last 12 years? Because maybe I would just take that 5% of my commission and put it in the S&P 500, and it'd be a more stable investment. But no one's asking any of those questions because the decision's predicated on emotion to begin with.
Yeah, that's true. That's good insights as well. So I was curious, being like a lifelong entrepreneur yourself, like seeing other entrepreneurs, salespeople, real estate, one of the biggest things that, like, I'll just use myself as an example, like building the business that I want to build, just getting married like 2 years ago, like going through those pains. Like, I obviously know I signed up for this. She knows, like, she partially signed up for it being married to me. But like, it doesn't stress me out to the point that it necessarily could stress her out. And just knowing that, like, wanting kids and everything, like, a big thing for me, like, these past like 6 to 12 months is realizing that, like, the amount of time that I put into the business, or the quality of time, I should say, is the quality of time that I need to also put into the relationship as well. I can't treat the business way better than I do the relationship. And this is just like a completely vulnerable thing that I'm just curious, like, speaking to people who are like building their businesses, going through, like, because it's a tough thing to definitely. So yeah, I don't know. It's a vulnerable place for me to ask. So I'm just curious, like, your thoughts, and like, you building your family, like giving your kids the quality of time, like I know family is a big thing for you, and like your kids is a big thing. So I'm just curious.
Yeah. I love that you went here. My divorce was final August of 2021. I was with her for 21 years. I worked at Blockbuster Video when I met her. She got North and Co. to 200 agents with me before we got a divorce. I asked for the divorce, and in hindsight, I wish I would not have. Now, I can't go back and fix it, but I definitely tricked myself into believing that what we had created was better than what she was asking for. Like, can you come home earlier? If you haven't read a book called The Way of the Superior Man, read it. Have you read that book?
I haven't read it. I had it mailed to me recently, but I haven't got to it yet.
It should be the first one you read if this is an important question for you.
Okay.
Their book. And what I would say is this: what I would like for you to take from that book, or interpret from that book, is when your kids and your wife say something to you like, "You're never around anymore," ask yourself, when you get triggered because it doesn't feel good, right? Like, what do you mean I'm never around? I'm fucking working my ass off. I'm out there every fucking day trying to, that's what it feels like on the inside. You get that trigger that feels not okay and you want to fight back. back to question asking. Ask, what did you really mean by that? Right? What did you really mean by that? Every time she said, you're never around anymore, I was like, of course I'm not fucking around. I'm trying to make us rich. I mean, I say that out loud and it's like, how douchey is that? You know what I mean? And what she was really saying was, I miss you. That's what she was really saying. But I put it off too much and too many times to where instead of saying I miss you, which was the early version of the relationship, she would say I miss you. And I would say I miss you too, but I got to run. And then I would come back 2 years later from 5,000 appointments. She's like, hey, I just want you to know, like, I still miss you, but you know, like, I still miss you too, but babe, I'm making our dreams come true. Then it transitions to you're never around anymore. And I lost sight of what she really meant when she said things like, you're not around anymore. And then I interpreted that as she's just nagging. She's lost sight of where we came from. She forgot that, you know, what it took to get here. She's not grateful. She's entitled. And I started putting all these labels on her. And the thing is, if she's really truly a partner, one thing I would say is schedule her like you do your calendar for appointments for work. My ex-wife made this point to me near the end of our marriage. She was like, why is it that we have something to do and you'll reschedule us, but you'll never reschedule a listing appointment or a buyer consult? And I was like, you're right. And the way I proved it to her was we had a standing meeting at 9 a.m. on Monday. And it was my way of showing her you are important, so much so that I'm going to put you in the gnarliest block of time in the week. And we did that. We honored it for a better part of a year. And it was a standing appointment to go over, and we had an agenda, like a meeting. It's like finance, how are you emotionally? You know, where are we at financially? And it was a 1 hour meeting that we had. And it helped. We were probably a little late, unfortunately. But schedule her like you would schedule your calendar for business. And then the second one is just, I can replay so many of those moments where she was just saying, I want to go on a date with you. I wish you were home more. I miss you. The kids miss you. Don't you miss your kids? Money doesn't really matter as much as we thought it did. We have money now. Do we need any more? She was saying that, but it was coming out like, why don't you care about us anymore? Why is work more important to you? And I would say, what are you talking about? Work's not more important to me. But she wasn't saying, why is work more important? She's saying, we miss you. We love you. So there's this thing of, in the way of the spirit man, is understanding how feminine and masculine communicate. That's really it. And it's a really confronting book because it's going to highlight how you communicate as poorly as you think she communicates, which is really great. And it's because masculine and feminine just have their own unique style of communication. But if I would have had the tools that are in that book throughout the development of my business, I think I'd still be married. The other thing I would tell you is I'm at a spot now where, you know, having been divorced, you know, at divorce, I probably had a net worth of $10 million. I'm just throwing it around. I don't know, probably somewhere in there. I'm probably at less than half of that now is where I'm at. You know, COVID and divorce. And I can tell you, you know, I feel more emotionally stable about money now than I did when I had $10 million. And it's because I'm stronger emotionally. I realize what's important. I realized that I had to go through this really fucking brutal, sad, dark healing time of having been responsible for breaking up my family, mending my relationship with my kids, and then ultimately mending the relationship with myself, and then staring at myself in the mirror and being like, what do I really need? Like, really, what do I need in this world? And I think that's a really big question to ask yourself is, what do you need? What do you need? Really, that's it. Like, what do you need? If at the end of the day, you know, you could wake up and your bills were paid without having to go to work every day, and you got to take 30 minutes to stare at your wife and hug her and tell you love her and get down on a knee and stare at your kids in the eye. You know, my intentional communication with my kids is all time. We're in a crazy transition right now. I'm homeless, technically. My house is finished being remodeled. I was in a temporary rental while it was being remodeled, and the lease ran out. We thought it was going to be done, and it's not done. So we're staying with friends, and my 16-year-old son has to drive his brother to school about 40 minutes one way right now. And it's stressful. And yesterday morning we woke up and my son was like, Dad, this sucks. I'm stressed out. I don't have my clothes. I don't have my room. I don't have a bed. I feel like I've got this imposed responsibility of my brother. And I came home last night and walked through the door. All my work's done for the day. And I don't feel like I have to prospect 14 more calls before the day's over to make one more deal, just another deal. And I walked in his room and sat with him in his room for a while and thanked him for his communication, and how forever the rest of our life, his ability and comfort and being able to communicate like that, it gives us a chance to grow together. And in the past, I'll tell you, when I was young, when I was newly married and thinking about having kids, dude, I had no time for any of that in my life. I was a cyborg. All I wanted to do was win. And today I have half of what I had financially and half of what I had familially. And I'm 2 times as strong mentally as I ever was. And my net worth will be 40 million bucks probably by the time my life is over, because I like to work, but it doesn't mean shit. You know what I mean? Like I said to this gal I'm seeing last night, I was like, I'm at a spot right now where if I sold everything, I might not ever have to work again. Everything. Let's sell the business, sell my house. You're like, sell your house. I'm like, yeah, I live in a house I don't need. Right? I have 7-figure equity in my house, like just sitting there in my house. I could sell my house and go buy a little house that I need, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, that has a kitchen in it, right? And take all the liquidity and invest it properly and not have to own a commercial building. I own the commercial building. I can pay the commercial building off cash, and the market rents for it are 20 grand a month. So I live in a nothing house and get 20 grand a month passive. Do I need to work again? No. Do I want to work? Yeah. Oh, that's the difference. Now I'm living a life where I get to work or want to work versus whether I have to work or not. And, for 15 years, I went to work having to work, and it was self-imposed. My wife didn't want what I wanted, and I wanted to win at all costs, and she didn't. She found a place where there was a happy point, and I kept my foot on the gas pedal until I killed the marriage.
That's good. We'll definitely read that book now. I really appreciate you sharing that. That's really helpful for me right now.
Just pause, dude. It's the best thing I can tell you is just pause. I didn't. I am full throttle, like insane full throttle. Like my life, dude, I mean, I'm in the middle of a remodel on a house. I was in Mexico last week planning a personal development retreat that I'm hosting. I'm launching a coaching company to help young people build wealth. I'm investing in real estate. I'm running my partner, Adam, and I plan on doing 150 million in sales this year. I'm homeless at the moment. My kid's frustrated. Like, the fuck am I doing? Like, really, why? My bills are paid. You know what I mean? Like, what am I doing? And right now is a real moment in my life where it's just like, you know what? Just pause, stop. It's not going anywhere. I can pick up where I left off. Like, take some moments to pause. And that's probably the best thing I can share with you. Just pause, even especially in the fleeting moments where she says something that triggers you. Just pause, stop. And if it feels like you can't say the right thing, walk away for a little bit of time and come back and just give her the attention she deserves. If she's speaking up, I have a therapist that I worked with that says there's no indifference in love, right? So if somebody's being indifferent, then they're not in love. So if somebody's fighting you, right? If they're fighting with you for something, they're in love with you. So remember that if she's fighting, she's in love with you, right? So just remember that, and then you can pause and go, okay, hold on. I don't understand what's happening right now. I may not have the tools to navigate this right now, but because you're fighting, I know you love me. So let me figure out what I can do next. And that book will give you some good wisdom.
That's awesome. And if people want like more, they want to follow you, like where should they go?
Yeah, Brian C. North, Brian, middle initial C, last name North on Instagram. We're starting some YouTube stuff right now, but I'm not doing a ton there. And then, that's the best place, man. Website, I don't check much. Email, I'm not great at. Hit me on Instagram. We'll go from there.
Awesome. And I may be misquoting this, but I did want to ask, you said if you had a potential book title for your son, it would be the word yet.
Yeah, that's right.
Why?
I'm a little emotional right now just because I've been getting my ass kicked lately, personally and professionally. It's real life. When you live a big life, comes with big challenges. And my son, my older son is just a fucking stud, and his communication's amazing. And you bringing that up, I didn't remember sharing that with you. Reminds me of he and I having another one of our deep conversations. And at the end of it, he was like, fuck, Dad, you're the man. You know, like you just, when things are really hard, you help me a lot. And he's like, you should write a book. And I was like, you know, sounds cool. I've been told that before. You know, if I was going to write a book, what do you think I should title it? And he sat back super casually and he got a smile on his face and he said, Yet. The reason that he titles it that is because I taught him at a very early age that if he says anything that ends with N apostrophe T to finish the sentence with the word yet. So I can't yet. I couldn't yet. I shouldn't yet. I wouldn't yet. I won't yet. And it just authorizes us that when we get into a place in our life where it feels like, you know, we can't get to the next spot and we're like, fuck, I just don't think I'm built for this yet. Right. So for him to have internalized that and have been able to share with me in real time in a vulnerable moment that we were having together was super emotional because it was like, fuck, he's listening, you know, he's really listening. So, yeah, I'll write a book called Yet at some point for sure.
That's awesome. I'll definitely buy it. I appreciate you sharing that as well.
You know, I
That's
know
awesome.
we're going to get some good stuff. I appreciate you having me.